Hello. I'm glad you're back. Before I start in on the Loch Ness monster today, I want to do a quick little laundry list of some stuff that I've changed on the stream overlay. On the right side, my little image for myself is now reactive to voice. I added small animations to that just for fun. But yeah, I was pretty happy with that. I was working on that last night, I think. So yeah, now every time I talk, my little drawing of myself looks like I'm talking, kind of. But yeah, thank you for coming back. I'm glad that you're here. That makes me happy. I feel like I talk to myself a lot on these streams with nobody being around, and it's a little sad and depressing sometimes, but I appreciate it. Something else I want to talk about real quick before we start on the Loch Ness monster is I do have an Etsy shop, and I'll be adding new stuff to it very soon. So I have been working on keycaps. I was trying to do custom computer keycaps a while back. Finally got a way to make that work. So I'm working on little new designs for those. They will hopefully be appearing on Etsy soon. I have a little mouse. I have a kitty cat. But yeah, hopefully I will have some new products on the Etsy shop, which I will feature in a separate video at some point in the coming weeks. But yeah, so I did that. I also have been working on my microphone settings again. I think it's better. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with microphone settings. But anyway, we are doing the Loch Ness monster today. And thank you. I'm trying to come up with a few more designs for the keycaps. I'm still debating a few. Oh, and I have one more. I have a little puppy dog. I wanted to make it like you were pressing his tummy, but I'll be making copies. I'll make it like silicone molds for them and copies so that I can repeatedly design, paint, and sell multiples. But we'll see how it goes. I tried this last year and I had to rework some of the design elements to make it work. Anyway, you can probably tell this sculpture is considerably tinier than what I usually do. And that's because I'm going to be doing something a little different today. The place I work at has a bar, and they have a lot of bottles. So my goal is to put the Loch Ness monster in a scene inside of this bottle. So I had to make it smaller because it's got to fit. So we're going to be making it a lot smaller than usual. The last bottle I tried to do just privately on my own time didn't turn out well. The resin flash cured on me and I had some issues, but hopefully this one will go well. I'm going to use the bottle base here as kind of a guideline for myself. So my goal is to basically make a full miniature scene inside a bottle. Today I'll just be sculpting the Loch Ness monster. But when we do the painting video, I'm probably going to do, which will be next week, I'm probably going to do like a full base. And then we'll reattach the bottle to its base. Obviously, I'll clean the bottle up and get the labels off. We'll reattach it together and then I'll fill it with a little bit of resin so that it looks like it's partially submerged in water, and we can do the classic image of its head being slightly above the waterline. But yeah, so a little bit smaller, a little bit more, a little less detailed than usual because of the size, but I think it'll be pretty cool if I can pull it off. Either way, we're still going to be sculpting the Loch Ness monster, whether or not the bottle and resin situation turns out too great. But I'm going to go ahead and get some clay out here. I will attempt to get clay out. So I was reading over the lore of the Loch Ness monster, and it is something I would definitely class as a cryptid rather than mythology, just because I was thinking the other day, like, what's the difference between a cryptid and folklore? There kind of is a lot of overlap, but most cryptids, at least what I class as cryptids, tend to be like heavily based on incidents and specific sightings. They usually have a certain time frame where there's this particular event, somebody saw something in the darkness they didn't understand, And then there's usually multiple sightings that occur after that, photographs, videos, and it's an ongoing phenomena. They also tend to be a little more modern, although they sometimes will call back to older mythology and legends. Most cryptids I've always classed as like, this happened in the early 1900s kind of thing. So in the Loch Ness Monster's case, there's always been a lot of different lore about water creatures that, you know, drag people under the water, like kelpies and stuff in the area. But most of the legends of the Loch Ness Monster developed out of a sighting from 1933. There was a whole bunch of sightings from 1933. And I can pull it up here on my phone so we can talk about it. Yeah, so if you look at like the wiki page or encyclopedia articles, they will reference some earlier sightings. But most of those weren't strictly associated either with the specific lake or the attribution's a little questionable or stuff like that. They weren't especially associated with the Loch Ness until the sightings in 1933. The very first sighting was, I'm probably mispronouncing her name, Aldi or Aldi McKay. And it was, like a lot of cryptids, published in a newspaper. She and her husband were going past the lake. Let me pull it up here. And they sighted a creature that was rolling in the water that was like the size of a whale and reminded them of a whale. I think she referenced it as a monster and mentioned that she had heard oral legends about water monsters in the Loch Ness, and that was a tradition prior to her sighting. But they reported it to the local person. It got sensationalized, got published in the newspaper. And the term Loch Ness Monster was probably coined around that time. It was part of, most of the thing with cryptids is kind of interesting. Most of the terminology gets coined by newspaper editorialists. So like Mothman got named by a newspaper, even though the original sighting was like, oh, he's more like a bird. So that's kind of what happened here. The Loch Ness Monster got its name from newspaper articles after the sighting occurred. So that was the very first sighting. The description here, which is important for the sculpture, is that it was rolling around in the water. It reminded them of a whale. They didn't really get a good sight of it, but that it was creating gigantic waves. So something very large, very big. I don't think they saw the head. Yeah, they didn't sight the head or anything specific other than it was very large, very fearsome looking, and in the water. All right, let me smooth this out a little bit before I continue rambling. But one of the things that happens with cryptid sightings is that as soon as one person sees something, suddenly everybody sees it. And that's kind of been the case in all the ones I've done so far. There's usually like this initial sighting and then it gets sensationalized. Newspapers usually report it. And then everyone sees it. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think some of it's just that, you know, if you have that in your mind, you know, somebody's seen some terrible monster in this location. And you're in that location and you see something that you don't expect, your brain logically just goes, oh, that's what it must be that. You know, you immediately jump to that as the explanation, and that kind of makes sense. I think that's a lot of it. But what's interesting about the Loch Ness Monster is much like Bigfoot, some of the sightings are undetermined, but quite a few of them are known hoaxes. A lot of the photograph, we'll talk about it a little bit, but the photograph that I posted for the thumbnail is like the classic Loch Ness Monster photo, has pretty much been accepted as a hoax. But that's what's always interesting. Whenever one person sees a monster, then suddenly there'll be a flood of sightings. So in the case of the Loch Ness Monster in 1933, after the first sighting, there is a ton of sightings and photographs and people saying that they've seen it. The next one comes about from a gentleman called George Spicer. He saw a gigantic animal cross the road in front of his car. He and his wife. I do think it's funny that these are mostly couples. That's not always the case in a lot of these. Usually it's like a single or couple people by themselves. It's fascinating that this is mostly husband and wife sightings. But they said it didn't look like it had limbs, or it had very small stubby limbs. Had a very long head, and this is where you get one of the first descriptions of it being like a plesiosaur, like the old dinosaurs with the long necks. So that's like the first major physical description, other than the earlier, really early legends of something being somewhat salamander-like and in the water, but those came from like the 1800s and older. So it lurched across the road in front of them, in front of their vehicle, and they said it looked kind of like a plesiosaur, and I think kind of like the head of an otter. Let me see. No, they just said it looked like a plesiosaur. Someone else later said it looked like it had the head of an otter. And they insisted that it was carrying something in its mouth, so apparently it's a predator. So I am going to see if I can kind of make it look a little bit like that. For my purposes, I'm probably going to try to make the head a little bit otter-like or seal-like, because those are the two other comparisons that come about quite a few times. Let's move this out a bit. See, we still fit in our, yeah, we still fit in our base. So his was in July, and then later in August, the same, I think it's the same newspaper that published the original sighting, published it again and solidified the name the Loch Ness Monster, as it was kind of gaining notoriety. Then another gentleman called Hugh Gray was one of the first photographs that supposedly depicted it, and like all cryptid photographs, the photo was blurry. Which, that seems to be the trend with every single sighting of anything in the modern times. People will be like, oh, I have a photograph, but the photograph's so blurry you can't tell what it is. So he had one of the first photographs. Later on, however, they said if you look at it pretty closely, he had a pet Labrador, and a lot of people think, now this one they're not sure about, but a lot of people think that it may have been an image of his dog swimming in the lake. And that he was just lying, which kind of, I always wonder, like, why do people do that? What do you get out of that? You know? Because there's quite a few, like the early, I think I talked about before, the early Bigfoot sightings. One of them, there was actually a gentleman who had, like, basically wooden carved pairs of feet that he would make footprints with, and they proved this later on because they found him in his basement. And it's like, what do you get out of doing hoaxes? I always wonder about that. Is it, like, notoriety or attention? Because I would feel bad if you knew you got attention for something you were lying about. I don't know. I don't understand what the thrill is about making a hoax and getting people to believe it. But his photographs were pretty much believed to be hoaxes, potentially photos of his dog swimming. And as always, they're blurry, and they always lose the original negatives. That's another trend, like especially for the older photos. It's always like, well, the original negatives for the photo were lost. They never have the original copies. Let's smooth this out a bit. But his was not the only sighting in 1933. Then we move to Arthur Grant. Well, actually, that is the only, because this one's 1934. It's the very beginning of 1934. And he's the one that specifically said it was a giant creature with a very small head. And he also said that it crossed the road, much like the couple from earlier. He saw the creature cross the road and said it looked like a cross between a seal and, again, a plesiosaur. So that's my guidelines for the appearance here. I'm going to have to pull up reference photos of seals. And classically, they always go to follow it or see it, and then it slips into the water, and then they can't find it anymore. He reported it as being incredibly long, and most people said it sounds a lot like an otter. And like most cryptid sightings, his occurred at 1 a.m. in the morning. So, again, poor lighting, couldn't see it well. But it seemed pretty big, he wasn't too close to it. And then lost sight of it. The most infamous one is probably the photograph that I used for the thumbnail, and it's called the surgeon's photograph. I don't know why they call it that, because they attribute it to a guy who's a gynecologist, which is not usually a surgeon. So I don't know why they call it the surgeon's photograph, but he was a medical person. And the original attributions where he claimed he saw it, they didn't mention a photograph. The photograph came about later, which is kind of odd in and of itself. But what's fascinating about the photograph is they also are pretty sure it's another hoax one because it looks really big in the photograph, but when you actually zoom out, what you realize is the photograph's been heavily cropped and that the actual item, if you take the full photograph, is probably only a few feet long, maybe 2 or 3 feet long, and not nearly as big as what he said. So it was held as the most obvious sighting ever, and that particular photograph was kind of held in high esteem until people started analyzing it. And later on, let's see, I think it was way later. Yeah, for 60 years, the photo was considered evidence of the monster's existence, though a lot of people kept saying it's probably not because it's too blurry to tell what it is. But when people started looking at it, they realized that it had been heavily cropped, that it was considerably a smaller object than he had said originally. And then there's issues with like blemishes on the negative that they found, a whole bunch of problems. And then there was a 1999 book that someone went over all the potential hoaxes in it, and several people involved admitted that it was in fact a hoax. They, I think they used a toy submarine and put a neck on it. Which, that's the other thing I wonder, like, that went on for like 20 years. So you made a photograph, I guess for fun, and you tell everybody you saw a giant monster because you heard local legends of it. I always wonder, like, what do they get out of that? Is it just the notoriety? I don't know. I don't know why you'd want notoriety for something you made up. But yeah, so they apparently made a head out of putty and wood and attached it to a toy submarine and then took the photos of it. Yeah. The toy submarine was bought from F.W. Woolworth, and its head was made from wood putty. And the people who took the photo, I actually don't even know if the original photo was by the guy that they attributed it to. Yes, and they said he enjoyed a good practical joke, but I'm like, why would you let a practical joke go on for 20 years? That seems a bit much. This reminds me of the kids who did the fairy hoax with photographs. I'm trying to remember what their names were. There was, because I remember watching a movie about it, and the movie took it as, oh, they weren't lying, but then if you read the actual story, they admitted it was a hoax. There was 2 young girls that had done a hoax where they positioned like these fake dolls. It was an old photograph thing too, so it was very difficult to confirm or, you know, for people to analyze. They didn't have the tools that we have now. And they had set up all these fairies and insisted that they had communicated with fairies, and they took photos. And it went on for years. I think one of the girls actually grew up and died before one of them admitted it had been a joke. And I remember that one specifically because I believe the author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a massive follower of them and believed them up until they admitted that it wasn't true. But yeah, a lot of cryptids seem to have hoax photographs, videos, and stuff. There was a ton with Bigfoot as well. I didn't have time to read through all of them, but there was a lot. I guess it is just like the 15 minutes of fame thing that people want. But I don't know. All right. Looks kind of like a swan right now. Okay, so he needs to have a stubby tail. There is some woodcut woodcut type illustrations that appear in a couple of the newspaper articles. If you go to the Wikipedia page, you can see some of them. But generally, stubby little legs, looks like a plesiosaur or a salamander. I do want to look up, because the other descriptor we have is that its body was a bit whale-like. So I think... yeah. I might look up the texture on like the stomach of certain whales and see if we can imitate that. Let me finish getting the head base done here before I continue rambling aimlessly about this. Eh. Yeah, ever since I blended the two clay types together, this has been so much easier to work with. Because my Sculpey clay was starting to dry out and crack and cause a lot of issues for me. Okay. There we go. Looks very much like a swan. I actually almost did the Grafton monster today, but I was like, nah, I should probably do the Loch Ness. Because I think somebody actually asked me to do the Loch Ness a while back. But now that I have the bottles, I can put it underwater. It'd be kind of cool. Okay. Smooth that out. Alright. We got the base done. The head's a little longer than it is in a lot of the illustrations, but I think it'll give it more character in the bottle. Yeah, because it'll fit in the bottle like that. And that'd be kind of cool. I do want to give it a stubby tail, but I think we're going to have to wrap the tail kind of around, because it's not going to fit in the bottle if we make it too far out. Was it really? Awesome. I'm glad I'm doing it now, and I'm glad you showed up for it. That worked out well. I apologize. I don't always remember people's names. And sometimes people change them, and I'm like, who are you? Oh, wait, I remember. Because I read all the comments, but I don't always remember the names. Yeah, it's been on my list for a while. Well, let's make the tail more stubby. Do you have any other cryptids or mythology that you think is really cool that would be fun to see? Let me pull up a photo. I need to pull up my reference photo of plesiosaurs. Okay. Their tails are pointed, I think. Okay, slightly pointed. Okay. And let's see, we're going to have to wrap the tail around a bit like this. Maybe a bit more. Else it won't fit in the bottle. There we go. Oh, really? That's funny because my sister lives in Wisconsin. I'm actually not familiar with any from Wisconsin. I'm very familiar with most of the ones I've done have been from West Virginia, which is where I'm from. But I don't actually know any Wisconsin ones except I know some mythology. Like I was looking at Mishi Peshu, but that's more of a Native American folklore thing. Like off the top of my head, I don't know too many from Wisconsin. I'll have to look. Most of the Loch Ness monster sightings after like the infamous photograph are predominantly, I think there was a video, but they're predominantly all people seeing just floating objects or indistinct water waves. The photograph that I used was like the last major sighting. And then there's like one weird thing where they were doing sonogram type readings underwater. And they detected something very big and very large following a ship, but then they lost track of it and have no clue what it was. Yeah, there's a couple films. There is apparently a few films. I didn't go through all of those when I was reading it. But, yeah. I'm still trying to think of cryptids in Wisconsin. Huh. Does that fit? Fit? I think that fits. Yeah. Sure the head isn't. Curl the tail a little more like this. I'd actually never even heard that Wisconsin was like the most haunted place in the US either. I always thought it was a different one. Sure, no problem. All right. All right, now I need to do... there we go. Don't crack on me, clay, please. Okay, now we need to do the fins. And then we'll move to texture after that. Add some more support at the base of the neck or it's going to keep flopping on me. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. All right. There we go. It's a better neck base. There we go. All right, I think, yeah, I like that neck shape better. Trolls in Wisconsin. Interesting. I'm going to have to read about it. I feel like, I might have seen that and just not known it was associated with Wisconsin. But I also feel like that might be a German thing too. And with a lot of the people who settled in Wisconsin being German immigrants, it might have ties back to Europe as well. So that might be really interesting to look at. Because I've seen a lot of like the European wood trolls that people design. And it's making me think of that. I'll have to look for that because I think maybe I have seen that. There we go. The neck is a little more stabilized there. All right. I gotta look at the texture of the underside of a whale real quick. So I'm thinking of the one, there's like one that's ridged. Well, yeah. I think we'll do the texture like that because that'll be interesting. It's kind of interesting with the troll thing too, because I think there's a lot of cultures that will do like little fairy houses too, for similar reasons. Some of it becomes just an artistic tradition, and some of it's actually based on folklore. So it's a similar concept. Okay. No, I should probably not use this. I'll use this. Give it a nice ridged pattern. Probably use one of my texture rollers as well. Mount Horeb. That sounds familiar. That sounds really familiar. Here, let me Google it real fast. I'm curious. Mount Horeb. Okay, I probably know it from the biblical reference to Mount Sinai. But it's also the troll capital of the world in Wisconsin. Very cool. Okay, Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. Wait, that's awesome. There's so many sculptures. Norwegian heritage. Okay, so it's Norwegian. That makes sense because I think the Norwegian legends also have similar things where they have the troll sculptures and stuff. I thought it tied back to Europe somehow, but I wasn't sure. Dane County, southwest of Madison. Became known for Scandinavian imports in the 1960s, which led to the troll theme. That's really cool. I almost want to go there now. That sounds fun. All right. Let's see. I think that's... Let's do one more on this side. Got a ridged pattern there. Can't see it with the light too much. Okay. Texture roll this to make it bumpy. And I should probably do slightly wider piece, widen these up a little bit. Like so. All right, texture roll this again. To make it bumpy. Because it looked like the underside of a lot of the ridged whale that I was thinking of. Has a little bit of this texture. There we go. All right, I don't know if the camera can... There you go. You can see the texture now. Yeah, that's what I was going for. Because a bunch of people said it looked like a whale. So this is our whale inspiration in the fins here in a second. All right. Let me pull up the photo of the plesiosaur again. I have like 6 tabs open right now. Okay, so we need some front fins right about here. So here and here. And then we'll have back ones as well. Okay. Cut in half. Oh, there's a little more clay on this one. There we go. And then it looks like they're kind of rounded at the top and then long like that. Kind of like that. They remind me a little bit of turtle fins, actually. Yeah, that's about the right size. And we got to do the second one. One of the things I've learned is whenever I'm doing limbs, I keep them off the body and then I just match them up like this. And then I attach them both at the same time. That way I keep them the same size. Because I used to do like one arm or one leg at a time. And they always ended up, or in this case fins, they always ended up mismatched. So now I make them at the same time and then I hold them up. I'm like, are they the same? They're roughly the same. Not quite. I'm going to shape this correctly. Okay. And then I think I'll also use the little bumpy texture here as well. On the base. All right, and then that gets attached about here. And fan out the base of this fin. Okay. There we go. Actually, no, I did that backwards. Dang it. I'm so stupid. That is the shape was back. There we go. This part needs to come to the back. All right. At least the clay is very forgiving. There we go. That's the proper direction for it to face. All right, and then this one also needs to be textured. In the base here. Texture it. And then attach it the proper direction. Not the backwards direction. with the thin part facing the body. Like that. A little further back. There. Hey, we have our front fins now. All right. Lay it on its side here, and then the back fins. How do I want to do those? They're pretty similar in shape, but they're a little bit more pointed on most of the illustrations, although I'm not sure how much information we have on plesiosaurs to actually know. I think the actual drawing of the Loch Ness monster, the back legs were a little bit more stubby. So we might, I think I'll go with the more stubby appearance, like shorter and stubby. Actually, you know what I could do? I could look at the tail of a seal, since everyone keeps saying it's seal. The inspiration was at seal, whale, and plesiosaur were the descriptions everyone gave it. So let's look at the tail of a seal and we'll make the back fins kind of mimic that. Okay. All right. We'll cut this in half. Yeah, that way we can make it kind of stubby, but we'll mimic the little ridge pattern on the seal's tail for the back fins. All right, we'll do, does that shape look okay? Yeah, that'll be fine. I do my best to try to draw inspiration from all the descriptions of sightings as well as the potential explanations. So we'll see how I do when I get to the head. All right, and then it's ridged like this. There we go. Kind of like that. Hopefully it's not picking up on the cameras, but microphone, but my neighbors are making noises. I don't know what they're doing. It's just loud. I mean, it's not that loud, but it's enough that I can hear it through the window being closed. There we go. All right. And then this one opposite. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, good, good. I'm just hearing occasional like thud, thud sounds in the distance, and I'm like, what the heck is that? They're probably working on something. To be fair, I don't have much to complain of. They're really nice. So. All right. There we go. We have our two fins. All right, let's attach these. Attach these a little lower to the back, like so. All right. I'm always struggling with the position of this camera, or camera light, because it never wants to, the clay is too bright a color. It always wants to reflect it. There you go. You can see the texture now. All right. Now we'll attach the other back one, and then we'll have to start the head. Then I have to think if there's any base details that I need to sculpt. I think most of that I will probably do with actual like rocks and sand, because I do have quite a bit. Whoops, that's too high. A little lower. Alright, yeah, right there. Forgot to texture the underside of the fin. Oops. There we go. All right, we got our fins now. Yeah. Weirdly enough, most of the drawings give it really stubby round back legs, which is not quite like the plesiosaur. The plesiosaur has two fins like these on each side. But yeah, I'm trying to like draw as much elements from each descriptor as I can. Now I gotta figure out what I'm doing with the head. That's the part that I've been avoiding because it's the hardest. Always save the hardest for last. That way I can stress about it the longest, you know? Alright. Because the head was listed as being kind of like a plesiosaur, but also kind of like a seal. So I gotta figure out how I'm smashing those together into one thing. Alright. What I could do is the plesiosaur design, but with like a seal's head shape. So let's try that. Let me pull up pictures of seals. Okay, so seal head, kind of like this. A bit like a dog, actually. It's got a little bit of a ridge right here, where its brow is. And then we can make it scaly so it's more dinosaur-like. Okay, so it's got shape like that. A little bit. We'll do the nose shape a bit like this. We'll make it a little more pointy. right. Shaped a bit like that. So then the eyes should go right about... Now I can't use the glass eyes because I don't think I have any tiny enough. I have to check my box here in a second. But the eyes need to go roughly... Oh, that's too big. They need to go right here. And here. Right about there. Okay, let me check my box here real quick. Do I have any super tiny eyes? I don't think I have any this small. No, the tiniest I have is that, and that's way too big. So we'll just have to do painted eyes for now. That's fine. Oh, wait. Wait, I do have... Hold on. But that's like the Eye of Sauron. I don't want that. Do I have any more of those? No. Okay. I don't have any more this size. That's a shame. I need to order more eyeballs this size. Alright. That's fine. We will just have to sculpt and paint the eyes. My opinion on abstract art? It depends. So, I appreciate art that has, I guess, thought and intent behind it is my biggest thing. And my caveat with a lot of abstract art is that a lot of times it's rebellion for the sake of rebellion, if that makes sense. So it's like rebellion against the normal art forms just for the sake of it. I like intent. I like people who like pick color choices and things for a reason. So I've seen some abstract art that's absolutely gorgeous. And then I've seen some where I'm like, you know, what was your intent? What was your thought here? Because some of them, like, I remember I went to a art museum as a kid, and there was an art piece that was literally a sink hung on the wall at an angle. And they called that art. And my brain went, what's the purpose here? Like, what's the artist's message? What was their thought? And I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't divine any meaning from that. So my biggest thing with art is I'm cool with it being different than the norm, in the sense maybe a bit abstract. But to me, art is a form of language. It's a form of communication. So there has to be something that you're communicating to me. It could be a very simple idea, like, I think this tree in my backyard is pretty, so I painted it. But it should have some concept or thought behind it. So that's kind of my opinion. I tend away from some abstract art just because it tends to have less clear communication. But I have seen some abstract art that I do like. So yeah, my biggest thing is like art is a language. It's a form of communication. If somebody can look at your artwork and divine some meaning from it, just like if I spoke a sentence to you and you understood something from it, then I'm cool with that. But if it's something that you look at and you're like, what the heck is that? Like a banana taped to a wall? I'm very loath to call that art. Hopefully that makes sense. But I have seen some abstract art that really did a good job with color choices and form and shape, even though it wasn't traditional. So I wouldn't say that all abstract is like bad or something like that. For me, it always boils down to, was there a genuine thought and intent behind this piece? Even if that thought and intent was very simple. All right. Now we should probably add some eyelids. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. You have a thought and you have a thought and an intent behind it, which is the big thing for me with art. Do you do abstract art? Is that what you're asking? Or do you do another form of art? I don't, if I've asked you that question before, I apologize. I've asked someone else about artwork before and I don't remember who it was. My memory isn't that great. He's looking like a grumpy dinosaur right now. It's not quite the intent I want. I'll have to fix this. Yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't have a hardline rule about abstract art. For me, it's always, was there thought and intent behind it in art? You know, is there communication or an idea I can get from it? And I think sometimes abstract does that pretty well. I'm not an expert on it. Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. I could see that. Art would certainly be a good way to express that. My little teddy bear character that I drew actually started as a cathartic way for me to express emotions that I didn't have words for. So I have a ton of sad teddy bear art, which is just little stuffed animals. My little bear that's on the left, looking very sad in various situations. Just because I find art is a medium that's very good for expressing stuff that is difficult to put into words. I'm going to try to do some more art along that line. I just haven't fully finished it yet. But yeah, art is a great way to express things that words don't always suffice for. I honestly think they should use it for therapy more often. What type of art medium do you like to do? Is it painting, drawing, sculpting, music? There we go. You can see his head a little better. Ah. Very cool. I love music, but I'm a little rusty at it. I am a, what's the phrase? A jack of all trades and a master of none. So, but that's cool. I'm glad you draw. I find drawing is a good outlet. I'm not the best at drawing. I do draw like all my thumbnails and stuff, but it is a medium that I'm trying to improve all the time. But yeah, I like sketching. I really got into sketching my little teddy bear stuff all the time just for emotions and things that didn't have solidified words that I could express. And I do think they should use art for therapy and stuff more often. And sculpting I like because it's very hands-on, and for some reason hands-on things, especially watching things take shape, is very cathartic and very calming. Some of the reasons I love sculpting, I've been doing it since I was a little kid with Play-Doh. But yeah, there's something about, even like I like baking and making bread, it's just something about working with pliable things that's very, very hands-on and very tactile and very calming. All right, let me pull up my plesiosaur reference here to see how we're going to do the mouth. Let's see if I can show the head again. Yeah. Come on, camera, focus. There we go. You can see it better that way. Music's really good for that too. It just tends to take a little more practice, I think, to get into. I really need to get back into like playing piano and instruments. I love music, but I was really interested in music theory, but I just have not had the time. Yeah, I highly recommend trying sculpting. The stuff that I use is... Oop. I don't know why the message was retracted if you did that, or if it auto-deleted it. I do have moderation on. But the stuff that I use is a type of polymer clay. It's oven baked, so if you have access to an oven that can bake stuff at normal temperatures. Oh, you're good. You're good. You can acquire a lot of it. I like the softer clays, but most people find the firmer ones a little more accessible. You can get cheap ones from any art store or online. Definitely try it out. It's a lot of fun. I always recommend stuff like this. I don't know, hands-on art is just, I don't know. It's very calming for me. It's very nice. And the other thing too is I think it very much taught me patience. Because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I'm one of those people who wants everything to immediately be clear and perfect the first time. And with clay, it takes time. You have to watch it slowly take shape, and it always looks really bad the first couple minutes. So, yeah. I highly recommend trying sculpting. It's very easy to get into. All you need for polymer clays is an oven. And I used to use the ends of paintbrushes and toothpicks as tools. All of this stuff is great, but you don't really need it. All right. What was I looking up? The plesiosaur. That's right. Where's my plesiosaur? There we go. All right. So we're going to make his head a little more pointy. And we got to give him some nostrils. If you're doing pots, ceramic clays are more useful, but ceramic clays do require like kilns and stuff, which I am trying to acquire a kiln, but they are expensive. But there's a lot of community groups that will let you use kilns and rent kiln space. Because yeah, pots are more... I guess you could sculpt a pot out of polymer clay, but typically ceramics are a little better for that. I have sculpted on top of pots before. That certainly works with polymer. I've done, if you take like a base ceramic and then, but I did seal it with a UV resin so that I could use it with water and stuff, because polymer clay is not completely waterproof. It is water resistant. But if you're going to paint anything, you will probably have to seal it with like a UV resin. But UV resin's pretty cheap. So you could get like existing pots and then sculpt on top of them. That's pretty fun. And not too expensive to start. I'm sorry, I'm always thinking about the price line of artwork. Because I don't have a lot of money, so I'm always like, is there a way to get into this art that's really cheap? All right. That might not be an issue for you, but it is for a lot of people. So. All right, we're sculpting more of the head. All right, now we got to do the mouth. We got the nostrils done. Okay. And I should probably try to give him some fangs because several of the sightings mentioned him, well, one of the sightings at least mentioned him carrying a creature in his mouth, so predator should probably have fangs. Yeah, and one of my favorite tools if you do get into clay is literally just a toothpick. It's great. And then for bigger pieces, the end of like a pencil or a paintbrush like this works great. No fancy tools required. Yeah, I got into sculpting when I was very little with Play-Doh. All the time. I'm actually looking at maybe redoing some of my childhood art. Just for fun. Just see how much I've improved. All right. Okay. These fangs are going to be very tiny. Lay him down. You can also combine, like if you like to do painting or dabble in painting, you can also combine painting and sculpture. Yeah, that's true. I've been finding photos of my old childhood art, just because I'm like, I want a good reference photo so that I can show the original and the later, because when I was in my preteens, like 12, 13, 14, up to 15, I really got into doing these tiny little sleeping fairy people. And they were decent for the age that I was, but I'd love to try it again and do some of the same character designs again. Because I too love to see how people have changed and how their artwork has improved. I think my mom still has the pieces in the house somewhere. I don't know. She might still have them. I'd have to go visit her and see. I don't have them. This might be a little long. Let's shorten the fangs a bit. That's a bit long. Here we go. Now we have some fangs on here.
If you get the air dry clays, those work well if you wanted. I've been toying with the idea of adding sculpture to a painting or to like a frame with like the painting looking like it's coming out. Because I already do, in my house, I've done drywall sculpture where I've have basically bolded reliefs on my walls that I did out of drywall mud. So I've been toying with the idea of, since I'm trying to learn painting, doing images that are 3D, basically 3D paintings. But I would probably have to use air dry clay because obviously you can't put the canvas in the oven. I don't know if the canvas, this is a pretty low temperature baked clay. It's 230 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius, but I'm not sure. I'd have to see if the canvas could survive that. If not, I'd have to use air dry. Which air dry is a little bit more fragile, but it would be fine for a painting because that's not going to get a whole lot of wear and tear. All right, let's texture the underside of the chin. I think that'll look good, just like we did with the underside of the belly. A lot of the texture you can't see until I paint it later, but it always pays off later, so. There we go. Ridge the underneath of the chin there, just like we did the underside of the belly. Some, a little bit of a rough texture there. Okay. All right, let's see if I can get the camera to focus on its head. It's the problem with smaller sculptures, especially in this stage. It's very hard to get the camera to focus on it. There we go. Come on, camera. Focus. You can kind of see it that way. Thank you. All right. Now the question is, how are we going to texture the back? I do really love these texture rollers. They were very cheap, but they're very handy. Let's see. Yeah, and he fits in the base, so he'll definitely fit in the bottle, which the bottle's dirty, but I will clean the bottle up before the next video. So he definitely fits in the bottle pretty well. And obviously all the labels will be off when I get around to it before next week. All right. Now I don't think the plesiosaurs are like reptiles, so they don't have anything on the sides of their heads. Oh, I should do. I know what I should do. I should add some shape here. Yeah. Indentations right there and here. A lot of this smaller texture the camera doesn't pick up very well until I paint it. But, okay. Alright, so as soon as I decide how the heck I'm texturing the rest of the body, we'll be pretty much done with our little Loch Ness monster for today, at least. Now, this is a much shorter video. It's only about an hour and 20 minutes. But that's fine. It's because he's so much tinier. Alright. Let me see here. Texture. I could use a brush. Oh, I could use this. I like this one. This one's kind of veiny. Just enough texture that when we paint it, I can use the dry brushing technique to kind of highlight it and make it look... My brain's thinking like shark skin. That slightly, ever so very slightly leathery texture, which I have vivid memories of because my dad used to collect swords and he had a shark skin handle on one of them, which was really cool. Always loved shark skin because of that. Yeah, this looks good. Now, I can't really show the texture on camera. You can see it a little bit. Not very much. Okay, and then we want to make sure the tail is curved downward so that it fits into the bottle. All right. Okay, perfect. Okay, I think shorter video today, but I think we're pretty much done with this little guy. For today at least. I'll be back, of course, next week, and I'll be painting him, and we'll be adding the base to this that he'll be attached to. I will probably do the resin pouring, I think, off video, just because resin's not something I can really do up in my room right now where I have this set up, but I'll try to video it at least. But I will do the painting and base setup next week on Friday, same time as I usually do. But let's see if I can get this annoying light to do its job. So you can see the texture on the back, fins, the head. Well, awesome. I will look for you next week then. It's always lovely to have someone to chat with a bit. I run out of stuff to say and then I end up being dead silent for like hours. There we go. Yeah, you can see the texture on the fins there. And then the underside, ridged like a whale, with the seal fins and a little bit of a seal head combined with the plesiosaur. But yeah, I greatly appreciate you stopping by, and for anyone else who watches this video later, let me know in the comments if there's any other things you'd like to see me sculpt, and thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you have a wonderful evening or morning, whatever time it is for you. It's like 7:30 here, so have a wonderful night, and I will look for you next week.